Well, welcome back to Gospel First. I'm Joe Cirillo, and I'm really glad you're here. Just a reminder as we begin, we're not doing this to check a box. We're doing this to be with Jesus Christ. 10 minutes a day in the Word with an open heart changes us over time. Today we're in Mark chapter 13, and before we read a single line, hear this. Jesus is not trying to scare his disciples. He's trying to steady them. This is a chapter for anxious hearts, for anyone trying to stay faithful when the future feels unclear. So we're not chasing timelines today. We're listening for what Jesus says to do right now. Watch, pray, endure, and stay rooted. So let's begin. Mark chapter 13, verses 1 to 2, there shall not be left one stone. As Jesus leaves the temple, a disciple admires the building. Jesus responds in verse 2, there shall not be left one stone upon another, thou shalt not be thrown down. Now this is unsettling. Jesus reminds them that even sacred structure are temporary. Faith cannot rest on buildings, systems, or stability. It must rest on God himself. So what's the principle? Faith anchored in God remains steady when everything else shifts. Next is Mark chapter 13, verses 3 to 8. Take heed lest any man deceive you. Later, the disciples ask privately, in verse 4, tell us, when shall these things be? Jesus does not give dates, he gives guidance. In verse 5, take heed lest any man deceive you. He speaks of wars, earthquakes, and trouble, verses 7 to 8. Then he adds in verse 8, these are the beginning of sorrows. Hard times do not mean God has lost control. They mean the world is still broken and God is still at work. Something to think about here. Where do I look for certainty when things feel unstable? Do I trust Christ more than predictions or headlines? Next is endurance over alarm. That's in chapter 13, verses 9 to 13. Jesus speaks honestly about opposition in verse 13. Ye shall be hated of all men for my name's sake. But he anchors hope here in verse 13. He that shall endure unto the end, the same shall be saved. Endurance does not mean intensity. It means remaining faithful, quietly, steadily over time. Jesus also promised help in verse 11. It is not ye that speak, but the Holy Ghost. Ye will not face difficulty alone. What's the principle? God supplies strength for faithfulness, one moment at a time. Next, in verses 32 to 37, watchfulness, not panic. Jesus makes something very clear here. Of that day and that hour knoweth no man, in verse 32. You see, speculation is not discipleship. Jesus then tells a simple story of a household waiting for its master. He concludes in verse 35, watch ye, therefore. Watching does not mean fearfully scanning the horizon. It means living attentively, faithfully, and awake to God's presence. So here's something to think about. What does faithful living look like for me today, not someday? Where might God be inviting steadiness instead of anxiety? Next, in Mark chapter 13, verses 33 to 36, awake in ordinary faithfulness. Jesus says in verses 33, take ye heed, watch and pray. Not panic, not predict, but pray. Most discipleship happens quietly, in daily obedience, in prayerful trust, in choosing love again. What's the principle? Spiritual readiness is formed in ordinary, faithful living. Now think about this for a moment. Mark chapter 13 reminds us Jesus does not ask us to figure out the future. He asks us to trust him in the present. If today the world feels loud or uncertain or overwhelming, remember this. Jesus has already told us what matters most. Stay awake, stay faithful, stay rooted in him. And when everything else feels unsteady, know that he has you in the palm of his hand. Well, that's it for today. Thank you for staying faithful to the journey. May the Spirit continue to fill your heart and draw you closer to Jesus Christ. If your heart feels even a gentle nudge, I invite you once again to subscribe, like, and share so that we can spread the gospel of Jesus Christ together. And I'll see you next time as we continue walking with Mark in Mark chapter 14. Until then, God bless.